Mahatma Gandhi once said, "Live as if you were to die tomorrow. Learn as if you were to live forever." This is the Producers Lounge podcast, the best podcast online for tips and tricks on producing great film, television, and web content. Welcome back for Season 3, Episode 10, hosted and produced by GreaterAndGrander.com. On this week's episode, we're chatting with Ciro Nieli. He grew up in Philadelphia, not in Italy, but as a fellow Italian, I really love saying the name that way. Ciro has directed and produced animated TV shows, including Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Super Robot Monkey Team Hyperforce Go, and Teen Titans. We discuss moving to Hollywood from the East Coast, getting your first tests in cartoons, putting together pitches for Disney and Nickelodeon, the dark truths of the American animation industry, Los Angeles' great vegan cooking spots, and the importance of just doing the work. Ciro grew up in Philadelphia and has produced projects on 3 continents. I also want to give you a heads up, we talk a lot about moving out to Hollywood, specifically the neighborhood of Hollywood, and how it's changed from the 1990s to today, and all the romanticism of that period. And if you want to skip ahead to just the entertainment industry stuff, go ahead to the 16 or 17 minute mark if that's what you're here for. Here now is my conversation with Ciro Nieli.
Yeah, I guess when I first came to Hollywood, well, metaphorically Hollywood, I just lived in Hollywood.
Yeah. Nobody tells you when you're on the East Coast how expensive it is to actually live in Hollywood, huh?
Well, then it wasn't expensive. It was kind of dirt cheap.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think I had a 2-bedroom apartment for $750.
Oh my God. I envy you so much.
Yeah, then. I don't have that now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Feel free to check out the menu. I've been here a few times.
Yeah, no, I know this spot. It's been a minute, but I love it here, but I haven't been in a while.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, they're going to be over any second. I should figure out what to say to them. I usually come here for occasions, like a birthday or Valentine's Day, and it always ends up being like a special menu, which is really exciting. But, this was the place, I think, where the Impossible Burger was born.
Oh, really?
At least in LA, where it was first shown, so the burger joint, but
I did not know that.
I don't.
History to know.
I'm pretty sure. I could be wrong. So where are you from?
I'm from Connecticut.
Connecticut. I grew up in Philadelphia, so I get it. In fact, lately I've been like, I always kind of miss the East Coast. I had just seen the new Beetlejuice movie, and I really missed the East Coast. I was just like, it's that time of year where, it just gets really pretty over there.
Oh, yeah, when the leaves are falling.
Yeah, and also we're in like an LA heat wave, so it's not like I'm exactly thrilled to be here right now.
Yeah. I haven't checked the weather back in lately, but like, I remember it always being humid, so it's like 105 in the shade. So I gotta imagine like whatever we're dealing with, it's gotta be worse back there because of dirt.
Oh, it's awful right now, I'm sure. I might do pizza. Is that crazy? All right.
No, you're a grown-ass adult. You can do whatever you want. I'm gonna go stuffed French toast, and I'll just stick to water. Also, I didn't see it on the menu, but I have a nut allergy, so if you could just confirm there's no nuts in the French toast. Thank you.
What was your name? Adrian? Question anywhere, Adrian.
I'm Ciro. How are you?
I'm Tucci. Thank you.
That's cool.
How perfect for a Philadelphia episode that we have a waitress named Adrian.
I know, and we're just ordering pizza and a couple Italian guys, I imagine.
So what were your favorite memories growing up in Philly?
She's just the Philly of it all.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up in an era of a block. We got a rap for being horrible sports fans, but I grew up in an era where all the franchises were winning championships. So I had this, like almost like naive bliss, thinking that being a sports fan is fun. But I've seen, graffiti everywhere, and Dr. J was a big thing, and the hockey team, the Flyers, were great. The Phillies had won, all when I was like, early adolescence for me, or even earlier. That and like just when you're a kid, you don't really have a sense of the world, so
Yeah.
it's just you're kind of like reaching for an inch at a time. So like being able to be in the city and stuff and seeing things like that felt really eye-opening anyhow. I love Philadelphia. It's beautiful there. Yeah, no, I just love. I mean, and I would just going into the city. There was it's now a Macy's, I think, but it used to be called John Wanamaker. It was a big store, department store, and it was gorgeous. It was probably built at the turn of, I'm sure it was built at the turn of the 20th century, and it's actually featured in the movie Mannequin as a location. It's the store where he works, Andrew McCarthy. And but every Christmas they would do this Nutcracker light show, Nutcracker Sweet Light Show for the holidays. And I mean, just going into the city to see that, and just the window decorations and dressings. It was just like very enchanting. It's a very beautiful city. The art museum was phenomenal there. Yeah, but I remember when I was a kid, I desperately wanted to be an extra in Rocky 3, but my dad wouldn't take me. There were scenes where Rocky gets his statue, and he speaks publicly, and it's at the steps of the art museum. And I know a lot of my friends went. It was like an open call for like everybody to just crowd that scene. Yes.
And your dad wouldn't take it?
No, I think he worked. My father worked a lot, so.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
When was the first time you realized growing up that you wanted to be in the entertainment industry?
My dad's an immigrant, and he worked really hard, and then he would he started his own business, but he worked night and day, but he made sure on Sundays we would go to the movies, kind of. So I would do this thing where we go to the movie Sunday evening, and then I would run home, and I would quickly like get under the sheets and go to bed, but I would like replay the whole movie in my head, because when you have kind of an elastic mind as a kid, and I would literally go through the shots, almost visually memorized in order, and I would feel like, oh, I got to see the film twice. So I think I was inadvertently training myself like a cinematic language. And then I just was like living in movies at that point on.
Did you do that thing as a teenager where like you would just park at the movie theater and go to see like 3 or 4 movies in a day, or?
Kind of. I mean, the one thing I remember doing was that so I grew up in a town where my mother's brother had a business at a mall that was like 2 blocks away.
Okay.
So she had to go do something. She would drop me off at his business, which was a pizza shop, as well as my father's. And across from the pizza shop was a twin movie theater, like a 2-screener. This is like, the 80s just coming into its own from the, the turn of the 70s. And I remember like my uncle not wanting to babysit me and just putting me in the movie theater, and I would sit through, I remember being babysat by like Empire Strikes Back.
Yeah, I did the same, but for me it was a different generation. Like I remember seeing like Moulin Rouge and like a couple other films all on the same day.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I was a little boy, I would sit through because it was a different time where movies would just stay in the theater for 6 months or so.
Yeah.
So I must have seen Empire Strikes Back in the theater like 38 times or something.
Oh my God.
Because I would just get planted there as a boy. I must have been 6 or 5, and I would just sit through 3 screenings in a row.
Oh wow.
It was really weird. I know, I was that annoying child that would run up and down. But back then, the movies weren't that packed either. It would be like we used to have something called a Twilight show, where you'd have the matinee show, and then the Twilight show was kind of like a show just before the 7 p.m., 7:30 slot.
Yeah.
And that would be discounted as well. So I think, be like $1.50 or something.
Oh wow. Very cool.
Yeah.
And then you went to University of the Arts. And what was that experience like? Did you go specifically for drawing, or what did you choose to make?
By the time I got through high school, I decided I drew as a kid, but by the time I got through high school, I decided I wanted to be a filmmaker, and so I went for a film education. But everyone shares the same foundation education.
Oh, okay.
Whether if you're a visual artist, so whether you're a painter or a photographer or sculptor, you're all in the same classes. And it was during that time that it was recommended to me that I probably should be a double major, at least in animation and live action. So that's what I did, yeah. And that was fun. I mean, my experience there was incredible. I mean, I went from working for my father, like long hours, to the transition to just doing long hours of art was not a problem for me. I felt thrilled to be able to just not be working for my dad. So I just, was really into my work and school. Well, I think a lot of other people maybe partied a little bit more, but maybe not. I think I partied a bit too. I don't know. Yeah.
There's a time and a place for everything, and it's called college, right?
Yeah, college was great.
Yeah.
Um,
And I imagine in animation there are no ovens, so no pizza ovens.
no. And that time it was magic because that school was incredible. It was kind of like the fame school. It was there was the school of music. Underneath that banner there was the vision. That was the school of music, and there was the school of theater, the school of visual arts that I was a part of. I was in the film department, and then there was the school of dance. So your friends were, a saxophone player and a ballerina and a sculptor, and everybody hung out, and it was great. It was really great. I learned a lot about photography because my electives were mostly in photography and not anatomy but illustration.
Yeah.
I would just take as many illustration electives outside of my major. So school was great. And I was going there too as a teenager in summer classes. Like I would just try to get into the city and do animation school. But I was lucky to have that outlet. My two main professors were actually married. They're a couple. So they both came out of a Cal Arts education here and moved on to other grad programs. And then, they were my teachers there. And so in live action, my teacher was a man named David Fain. And then his wife headed up the animation department, and her name was Sheila Sofian. And they were both, really wonderful, because even though I had this East Coast education, I got a Cal Arts education, at least from an animation standpoint. It was very experimental. It was about movement and color more than it was about, it wasn't like Disney character animation school. It wasn't like a Sheridan or something like that. It was very much experimental animation schooling.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then I saw another interview. Apparently you, after you graduated, you were going door to door in Philly to try and do animated curses? Is that true?
I had done a little bit of that. I mean, you would do whatever you could there was no outlet, there was no industry, so you were just, looking for work and beat the street. But yeah, I had done animated in my South Philly bedroom. I had made like a used car lot commercial, and it was like I painted it on cells and shot it on 16 millimeter film.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was really wild. It was hard days, but back then when you're like 20 and you're in Philadelphia, and a professor job was like $500 or $600, I remember, a week, and I would get these animation jobs that were like I would deliver these projects and get like $2,500. I felt like I was like rich, My rent was $150 a month, so yeah, it was the 90s in Philly. It's not now.
Not now, no. Nowadays, every place is overpriced, unfortunately. So
Yeah, it's crazy.
and you can't. So when did you make the decision then to move out to LA?
Well, I'd always planned on coming here. It was a matter of when, and then I finally came with my parents. My father decided he wanted to go back to Italy, so he left and went to Italy in '99. And at that point, maybe just a few months after, I came here. Like I made the choice. When they chose to go there, they asked me if I wanted to go to Italy. And of course I didn't want to, because I'm basically American. And I was like, well, I have no one left here. So I decided I packed up everything in my Volkswagen and drove cross country.
Why not? So
Everything I could fit in there, at least. Yeah. So I arrived in LA early 1990.
early in what?
1999.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. What was that experience like? You mentioned Hollywood and well, you said $500 a month for rent, is it?
I think $750 for a 2-bedroom. But that's not, I had some really good friends that let me crash on their couches for probably 3 or 4 months. And then, my early days were in North Hollywood, which was not what I expected. I was coming off the flyings from the East Coast. I kind of felt like I went from one scary place to another, and I found it kind of confusing. But that was fun though. I mean, I look back on it with a lot of affection now. I kind of wish I could go back.
Easy. What do you miss most about that time? So what do you wish you could go back there?
I think I was just there's a little bit of opportunity that you have, an advantage in being naive and hungry, and young. So, and the city was different. I mean, LA in the late 90s when I got here was such an exciting place. So it still felt like the Hollywood that lured me here as a boy. And now it's very much driven by other things, I feel. Or at least the things that drive it are always the same, but the product is maybe different. So I kind of long for those other times a little bit more.
Yeah, it is. Because I remember coming out here in the 90s, and my dad was he was actually an exec at Viacom, so he would bring me out here when he had to come out to work a couple times. And
I remember going up to Hollywood Boulevard, checking out Prominent,
and just seeing like the just dense parking lots that were on both sides of the theater. Right. And then coming back years later and seeing Hollywood and Island, it was like it's turned it into a theme park now.
Oh yeah, well there's a period in between that you maybe didn't see, where those crowded parking lots were just barren wastelands with tumbleweeds. Yeah, and it was, the Hollywood Boulevard was a little shambly when I arrived, and it kind of suited me fine. I found it charming. It felt more like Vestron videos I remember from the 80s, like Vice Squad or Angel. Those genre films about Hollywood Boulevard's crime life, which I really liked. So I don't know. I don't like the theme park version it is now, and the facelift that they gave the Chinese theater. It's a little bit of a bummer. Yeah. When I came, it still looked like it did when Star Wars premiered. There was almost like on the sidewalk, there was almost a box office, and it was connected with this covered kind of trench tunnel into the theater. It was very different.
Yeah.
It's, same way you miss like an old Pizza Hut or a McDonald's, it's there, but it's not really the same place anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then, how did you get your first job in the industry?
Well, it took a while. I came out here, and what you do, I worked some jobs on the East Coast on film productions, live action after school and during school. And then I was doing, the animation stuff I talked about. And then I decided when I would come out here that I would just see what would stick first. So I started looking for, live action shoots, but I was also, deeply invested in getting animation studio work. So what they do in animation is they give you tests. And these tests are basically, they give you a little sample of what a week's worth of work would be like in a certain field or specific discipline, like whether it's prop design or character designer or layout artists, where you're actually doing some of the key poses for the animation of a scene. So I remember just maybe for a good part of a year and a half, I was just doing these tests for free. I would just stay up all night drawing and hoping that I would turn them in and someone would hire me. And
so just to make sure I understand, you were doing 40 hours of work.
Pretty much. That's how, the tests generally were about 40 hours worth of work. And then you would hand this chunk of paper in with a big clip and a top letter, and and you would plead your case, and you would drop it off at a receptionist, and then you would never get a call back. And you would just, you would call and call and call, and it really felt like there was no way in.
Yeah.
Which was very disheartening, and I started learning feeling like, oh, I think someone has to be alerted to this test and give me the job.
Yeah.
But I was young, I didn't give up, and then I remember I walked into the Fox Animation offices, and they were making Family Guy at the time. It was season 2, and someone in the back heard me, recognized my voice, and came out, and it was a buddy of mine from college who was working there. And he came out and was like, oh, you're looking for a job? Hold on, I'll be right back. And then just like that, almost like the doors open, a producer called me back. I sat with them, and he goes, okay, you're hired. So based on, my friend's recommendations. And I was hired as a storyboard revisionist. And I started making relatively what I found to be a ridiculous amount of money. Yeah, well, it was prime. Yes, thank you. So yeah, I ended up working on this show called Family Guy that nobody really heard of or cared about. It was really early. We were in production for season 2. So season 1 didn't really make an impact yet. And I think by the time season 2 went into production, there was like a massive reformatting of how the show would play a little bit. So, and it's about to explode.
But basically, like, I can totally empathize with, like, doing the tests and not really getting, like, any kind of a reply. Because when I came out for film school, I was very proactive and I reached out to these commercial companies and companies that, like, you're doing what's called a Mondo. For the listeners who don't know, a Mondo is basically when they cram all of the publicity for, like, the entire CBS fall lineup into right. And what, thank you very much. Of course, no. And I remember, and I went in, and the woman who was the line producer said, great, we'll bring you on, we'll have you on for free as an intern this time, and then the next time we'll pay it.
Like maybe as an editor or something, help cutting these like reels and stuff?
No, just as a PA.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so they had me come on, I did my weekend, 14-hour days, and then 3 months would come by.
Yeah.
And then they would be like, hey, can you work this weekend? Can you what's the first? And I was like, well, the agreement was I could come back and you would pay me a standard raise.
Oh boy.
And then the woman who was the assistant production coordinator would be like, hold on, let me check and I'll call you right back. And then I never heard from these.
Yep. And you would take it.
Yep.
I worked on a film on the East Coast. And it was directed by this guy named Mika Kaurismäki. But the camera crew and the film crew, like the whole crew, was a lot of people that were working on Abel Ferrara films.
I'm sorry, Abel
Ferrara, who made like That Lieutenant. He was he made a film called Miss 45, which is like an ultimate revenge film. And basically it was like a baptism into the madness of New York indie crime cinema, you know, and you know, squibs and blood and violence and gangsters and in the film, not in real life.
Yeah.
There was a prison movie, and boy, that movie was a nightmare. My job title was, they called me truck bitch. And I was like, my job was to just live on the truck and get down equipment for people that wanted it and load it. And I remember I was like unfurling cable, you know, they used to call it striker cable, you know, which would strike the lice through this dance club in Philadelphia, and it got snagged and a giant palm tree fell on my head and like ripped open my forehead. And
Oh my God.
but I mean, all that work was free. I mean, we were working like 60-hour, 70-hour weeks, 70-hour days. I mean, weeks. And you know, we wouldn't always get that 8-hour turnaround, but I was doing it for free. And it was crazy because it was like, oh, it's my first feature. Excited to do this, a major motion picture.
Yeah. So probably. My God. That's
Yeah, that's how it was though.
Yeah, I like to talk about those kind of stories on the podcast. That's like your issue with Fox. Like they hired you, they paid you a good rate,
Oh yeah.
and the people who are worth working for will actually pay you. Hey,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, that was a hard job for me though. I didn't understand the ropes, and I found it creatively difficult for me. Like it wasn't necessarily the best creative fit for me, and I found it to be tedious. It was, you know, it was dialogue heavy, sort of I was doing a lot of posing for like the characters of like every syllable. So it was like, I found it to be very tedious to draw all that. Which like, you would go through the script and you would, you know, sometimes you would take a word that was enunciated a specific way by the voice performer, and it would take as many as 3 or 4 panels of just, you know, whatever, like hand acting or mouth positions. Because they were layout boards. They weren't just storyboards. The idea was that they were going overseas to be turned into key animation frames, and that's how Fox saved money. They had board artists do like rough keys in the boards, which is a ripoff.
Yeah. I had a friend, Rick Belizzi, and he took me around. I think it was very Roman every time, and showed me kind of the key artist doing key for The Simpsons.
Right.
And then he said, oh yeah, it's going up to Korea. And what I didn't find out until much later was it wasn't going to South Korea, it was going to North Korea.
Oh yeah.
Which is like really crazy. That Hollywood is basically kind of paying for the Korean iteration of this thing.
Well, I never been to North Korea, but obviously, I did go overseas to Korea a bit, and I think I was on Avengers, and I went to. It was a town that was maybe like 3 miles from the DMZ.
Okay.
So we'd be there working, and it was really kind of like not the nicest building that I was in. It felt like it was just like a bomb shelter, and I don't know. But like throughout the day, there would be like air raid sirens, so we'd have to like go out and do like, we'd have to go and do like air raid drills, and stop drawing.
Oh my God.
And I was like, and they were test firing missiles one weekend I was there, and I was like terrified because I would see like giant missiles like going up in the distance, and people were just completely like not just phased by it, and I found it very stressful.
It's just a thing about. Oh my God.
Well, I'm an '80s kid, so I grew up with like bomb scare, like nuclear fear.
Yeah, I'm a '90s kid. I grew up with school shooting here.
Yeah, they're both not good, but like
Not good, no.
I was telling my girlfriend this. I was like, "Do you remember?" Because she's about my age, and I say, "Do you remember?" I don't know if it was just me. I was like, just the amount of anxiety that we had as children, just like Gen Xers, like we would just accept that like at any given moment we would just be like vaporized by a bomb. And I was just like walking home from the school bus, just imagining like a mushroom cloud in the distance as I'm walking home while I'm listening to like Purple Rain on a Walkman. A very specific time. And not to be grim.
Not to be grim. Like the Hollywood. So how long were you doing the storyboard work and layout work until? Because I find the timeline of always important. That the story went point up. Like sometimes the people tell a story and they'll be like, oh yes, I came out and dang, and he got a success. And it seems like it's 2 weeks. It's actually like 2 years.
Sure.
So how long are you doing like the
Well, I was super destitute, so I did it, and I was doing it for about 9 months, and then I think I was like on my feet again, and then an opportunity arose through some friends where I was able to storyboard. What was happening at the time, and this was probably around 2000, was there was a web animation boom. Like the internet started spawning all these different internet animations show outlets. And there was a thing called Icebox. There was another thing called Romp.com, which is like owned by Eisner's son.
Oh wow.
There was and there was a lot of like little studios that were being born out of that.
No, that's young.
I remember like Eli Roth started animation, like a web animation company at the time. I think it was called, it might have been called Rotten Fruit. They were like a service house. So I started getting like, you know, production work for those types of projects. And then I had inherited a contract to actually produce and animate one of the series that I was previously boarding.
Oh wow.
So I suddenly like, you know, exploded to having like a little multimedia web animation company.
Was that Super Robot Monkey in Hyperforce Go?
No, that was later. This was just me. Like I started a studio called Nebulous Films with a bunch of friends, and we were just making content for several years. But of course, you know, it dried up.
Yeah.
And the bottom fell out of that whole market. But it was a great way to get into the majors. Like I think the studio that I had formed with these buddies, we were great. Thank you. We were lobbying to get contract work with the big studios. One of them was Warner Brothers Animation.
Yeah.
And we ended up not getting those contracts, but they did end up hiring on me and some of my friends that started this company. So all of a sudden now we're like, you know, now we're working at a big studio. And it was great. Like, and then it wasn't too long after that, you know, a lot of the people that were my contemporaries were comedy animation people. They like cartoons, and but because I really had loved live action in that language, I made an impression on some of the producers, you know, from like Justice League and like the Batman shows. And when they decided to make Teen Titans, I was asked, you know, if I would just direct Teen Titans, and which was a great time for me, you know, like I of course I took it, again, naively jumping in, not really knowing the full requirement of what that job entailed. That was like kind of a baptism by fire. But I got to, all of a sudden I was directing a television series with a bunch of people that I admired, and I don't know that I was in over my head, but I mean, I might have felt that way at the time, but looking back on it, I realized that I was accepted and forming something as a team with a bunch of other really like-minded people, and it was really, exciting and natural, and I was in the right place.
Weren't you also asked at the time if you had directed before, or?
Well, I think, yeah, sure, and I technically did, but not for television, for the web.
Oh.
And I had made short films, live action and animated. I had hand drawn plenty of stuff, and I had storyboard quite a bit in my life, so I felt competent as a director. And then, I said, sure, I'll do it. I could do it. And then I went home and like shit my pants. I was like, fake it till you make it. But I was fine. I intuitively taught myself how to do a lot of it, not realizing that what I was doing was totally spot on or unorthodox from time to time.
I want to go back to the content company, because, I don't know about you, but I'm seeing a lot of ads in my feed, and I imagine a lot of people are getting like social media ads about like create an AI content mill when just pay $400 for this program, and you'll be able to make this money off YouTube like that. So separate, and of course it's bullshit. But like I don't know if you think so. And I actually I interned after going back to the idea of like web content in like the early 2000s. I interned for a company called Urban Entertainment.
Okay.
Back in the day, and they had tried similar model. Their whole pitch behind their business model was like, we're going to do short films and use that as the proving ground on the web to then launch franchises.
Oh yeah.
If you take it.
Same thing was happening in animation.
Yeah,
it makes sense.
But I don't know what exactly happened with yours, but like with Urban Entertainment, they made one movie which did okay at the box office, and then the rest of their plan never really materialized.
Right.
Kirk, Sandy, and I'm wondering if you, like, based on your experience, based on, I just provided like what their common mistake a lot of concept makers are making.
I mean, the problem with anything creative that sucks is you're fulfilling a demand as opposed to making something out of a real burning necessity personally. And like one is art and one is commerce. So I'm not, being like kind of naive about, you have to be this like starving artist auteur, but at the same time, those two things need to be mitigated. And you need to understand, that just fulfilling a quota to kind of feed this new media is going to create a lot of it's almost like some sort of like quality inflation. Like the more crap that's out there, the harder the value of things gets dropped, and then all of a sudden you find yourself in a place like we are now where, I mean, I feel like creatively this town is at an all-time low. I mean, it's like there's such a sense of fodder with the creative work that it's just I'm not that interested like in the movies that are coming out, and it's not because I'm older. It's just I think a different thing is driving what makes them, and I think a different group of people are driving them to get made. I don't see like a place where a new David Lynch can thrive or something like that. It's more about box office, and I don't know. I think this is a very uninspiring time in entertainment, and I think a lot of it is coming from changing media, new platforms, clickbait kind of for entertainment. Celebrity seems to have whatever that means now. Even a lot of the projects I saw during I felt like there was a big shift during the pandemic and the lockdown for sure, where live action kind of screeched to a halt.
Yeah.
And in animation, I think a lot of the live action people found it as a safe haven for them to kind of pay their mortgages. So big live action people, whether they were actors or directors and producers, were suddenly like flooding and taking over animation.
Yeah.
because the executives saw it as a coup. They're like, wow, we're going to get these big names all of a sudden to be involved in stuff that they would usually kind of shrug or shy away from. And then it kind of pushed away, like, the craftsmen and the people that were really a part of the industry, that were just going into work every day and making stuff out of some sort of, training and craft. I mean, it happened across the board with a lot of things, but animation was, I think, forever changed by that. I was up for a bunch of jobs. I ended up suddenly on a dime losing all of them because really big names all of a sudden were taking my job. And I was like, I never had to compete with these people. Like, they weren't a part of my peer group, career-wise. And it's never really kind of restored itself since.
Yeah, it does feel like there's always been a big boom and bust cycle in Hollywood. I remember when the 2007 financial crisis started in California real estate. And there were a ton of people who were suddenly, like, a ton of companies went out, and now you had people who were VPs or development trying to get creative executive jobs. I remember that in the live action unscripted world at the time, which I was kind of moving up in. At that point, like, all of my contacts, the executive producers like that, the budget for their shows got cut down. And so I had to just essentially count it. I was, like, very frustrated.
That you're just at the whims of boom and bust.
It's never going to snap back to what it was, but I have faith that there'll always be something good. It's just not as much. There's I was on a bit of a... Anytime I get to run a show, I get on these, like, kind of creative highs.
Yeah.
Because I'm kind of, like, creating my own job in a sense and creating a way or a realm in which I can thrive. At least from an art standpoint, I was calling the shots and making a bed for myself for long periods of time on these long shows. And the problem is always, like, when the show ends and that bubble you're in kind of bursts, and then you look out across the landscape and you realize, like, oh wow, like,
But speaking of, when you're show running, I saw you have a couple of exec producer credits. And you run, obviously, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which ran for 5 years.
5 seasons, but yeah.
I'm sorry. Was it CSAC? Because cook drink. And then Super Robot Monkey King Hyperforce Go, which I'm still curious about. I wasn't able to look it up.
It all back
But,
next year, so that
So I was at Warner Brothers, and I was a director on Titans, and that was a big hit. And then it became I was always, while I was there working, I was always taking pitches. I was pitching, to all the studios. And I think the success of that show kind of helped me get looked at in a different light. I was ushered in differently. And I sold this show to Disney. I went and had a meeting, pitched the show. And as soon as I pitched it, I was actually just a few seconds into the pitch, I showed a bunch of art, and the exec's like, I want this, I'm buying this. And then I came out of there very confused, called my manager and said, I think they bought my show. And they did. But what happened was, I was really into, this was like, I was really into Japanese culture and everything that went with it, which was these live action superhero shows, which is called Sentai. It's like, like what we came to know as Power Rangers here. But there was all these, like, really rich shows like that on TV in the 70s in Japan, all different incarnations all through up until now even. And, I was into, like, anime and giant robots, team action shows. And so I made a show about, which was Super Robot Monkey, was a cartoon about a boy who's wandering through the woods and finds an abandoned giant robot. And he sneaks into it and inadvertently, probably looking for a light switch, instead activates the robot, and at the same time is infused with the power to captain the robot and its crew of 5 cyborg simians. So it was basically like an excuse to put a boy in a flying robot through space and make him Captain Kirk. And have, like, ridiculous monsters to kill.
That sounds really fucking...
It was a lot of fun, and at the time it was fresh because, I feel like now that seems not so much, but in 2000 people were like, that's really out there, you're a weirdo. And so Disney comes at me with the budget, and they were like, it was insulting. Like the show budget was like less than half of say what Disney was paying to make like a Kim Possible.
Oh.
I think the budget they offered me was 250 grand a full episode, 22 minutes. You know, and I needed more like 500. So I refused the contract, and I was still director on Teen Titans. And the head of production, who's a wonderful woman and a friend of mine, had said to me, "What is it going to take, you know, for you to want to make this show?" And you know, I was like in my 20s, and I said, I just kind of blue sky, and I just went, "Oh, I'll only make this if I can produce the show out of Tokyo." And knowing that they would never be able to do that. And 2 weeks later, they called me and they're like, "All right, we have a studio for you in Japan. You're moving there." And so that's what I did. I moved to Japan and I made an anime action giant robot kids show for Disney. I was getting like a American Disney paycheck living in Tokyo in my 20s, and my eyes were wide open. It was exciting.
It sounds like an eye-opening experience. Wow. How long were you in Tokyo for?
My first trip there was 6 weeks straight. And I'll come back and then go back for several weeks at a time. And that lasted for 5 years.
Oh, wow.
Off and on. And when I wasn't there, I was talking to them, you know, real late night. Look, I'd be on the phone with them like 6 o'clock here till like midnight.
Yeah.
You know, working through a translator, going through scripts, because it was a co-production in Japan.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I spent so many hours with, you know, years with those people, that crew and that studio in Japan, which was so fantastic. And they're all super talented, you know. I was a kid, like, and then I was going to work with these guys who were my heroes, guys who had worked on, you know, the Ghibli films and you know, animation directors from Akira and things like that, things that really inspired me as a boy.
Yeah.
Akira was a movie that changed my life, and I know that a lot of people might say that, but I snuck away to the city when I was 14. I read a newspaper article that said, here's this movie, it's Blade Runner meets Speed Racer. And I thought, oh, I gotta go see this. It might have been 1989, and I took a train into the city and went to this place called the Roxy, which was like it was like a renovated porn theater that had become like an art rep kind of theater. And it, you know, it was very odd layout. And there I was, like watching Akira on film, getting my mind blown. Not realizing that in about like 12 years or so, I'd be working with that crew, making my own show in Japan. So it was, you know, I'm like, you know, I know a lot of kids love anime now, and I don't really follow the new stuff, but I'm like an OG fan of what they used to call, you know, at Blockbuster and video stores, the section was called Japanimation. It's probably a slur now, but yeah, no, I'm an old school anime fan.
That is.
So what was the biggest lesson you learned on that show that was I'm still like grasping my brain around it. Your first show as a showrunner, granted you directed Teen Titans, but your first show as a showrunner, like they fly you out to Japan, fulfill your dreams, and it's a multinational production. Oh, what was the biggest lesson that you learned?
It was just work. It was just very blue collar. And, you know, if you didn't do the work, you had to stand up, work first.
Yeah.
And at that time, you know, Japanese culture is very different than ours, and there's a certain respect that you need to earn. And if you're not family or a national, like, it's harder to get in. So I put my work up in front of me, and I think that endeared those people to me.
Yeah.
And I had to stand up like that, you know, every morning we wake up, and then I walk to the train station. I'd sit on the train station, sit on the train, the subway, and then I would walk to my desk, walk to the studio, walk to my desk, sit down and just pound drawings out all day.
Yeah.
And I'd be there till like 2, 3 in the morning with everybody else. And we were drinking and eating a lot and having fun, but we were like working super hard. And but that was Japan. I mean, that was like very much a culture. I don't know where they were like workhorses, and I just couldn't understand how well they could do that work. They're a whole different mentality than what we had here. But I learned other lessons working at Disney's. I learned, you know, that all that art stuff that I wanted to do was blasphemous. I remember walking into the, I had thought I inherited this cachet as a show creator.
Yeah.
And that, again, it was my naiveness. And I would want something that wouldn't go my way, purely out of the demands of the show. Like, I wanted this extra artist, or we needed more money, or creatively I like this idea. And I would just walk into the president at the time. I would just walk into his office, and he would just be like, "Whoa, what are you doing? You can't just walk in here." And I would just demand things. And he was a funny guy. We ended up becoming, in the beginning he was like so frustrated with me. He thought I was a lunatic. But we ended up becoming, very friendly. And he really liked me. But I remember telling him, he sat me down and he was like, "So what are you trying to do?" And I said, "Oh, this is just, Kubrick for kids." And I think I fucking melted his brain. He was like, "Whoa, hold on. What are you, crazy?" He's like, "Let me tell you how this works." And he just broke down for me the horror toy children's cartoon machine and the dollars and cents of it all. And that, I was very naive. But I learned, it was fine. Again, you got to mitigate that stuff. Art meets commerce. Wow. Yeah, that guy was great. His name is Barry. He was the president of Disney for maybe 12 years, Disney Television Animation. It's a buddy. Funny guy. Maybe feared for a while by his son, but I found him to be very affable.
Okay. So then a few years later, how did Turtles come about?
Several years later, because I had done Avengers in between for Marvel. I don't really feel like talking about that, but that was just a different time.
Well, I don't know what you can and can't talk about.
I can talk about all of it. I don't really care.
Okay.
The Turtles thing happened because I was a huge Turtles fan of the original comic, and I felt a little jolted constantly by me never being a part of a Turtles show, and it also never seemed me to fulfill what I felt it should do. And I remember at the time I was a little low. I was down on my luck, and at that time I didn't have an official full-time position, but I had an office at Warner Brothers, and I was independently producing like shorts that had Batman in them. I had done 4 or 5 little 1 minute shorts. I did like a 14-minute short. I was like, the boss at the time, Sam Register, referred to me as like, your Batman special projects. But it was like, it was the era you were talking about. It was the LA housing crisis, and like everybody was broke, and I was just going contract to contract, struggling. And I read in the trades that, Viacom had bought Turtles. That manager booked me a development meet and greet with the guy in charge of development, Nick. And again, I walked into that meeting for Turtles. It was a general meeting, but about Turtles too. And I just thought, I got this one because I love Turtles. And there's only 3 other guys in this town, I think, that can make it, and they're already working.
Yeah.
Other great animation action director guys, they're already booked. And boy, was I wrong. It turns out, and I was very confident in that meeting, and then they told me, why don't you come back and prove it to us, that this is your show. And I took it very serious. I put together a very big pitch with lots of art, and found out that they were talking to 200 plus people.
Jesus.
To do that show.
Where do you even find 200 plus showrunners?
It was, they weren't showrunners. They were, creatives to kind of form it. And some of them were like special effects makeup people. Some of them were just like music producers. It was all different, wacky takes.
Like going back to the celebrity point you mentioned earlier, people just coming in saying like, "Oh, I did a feature, but I wanted in Turtles, even though it's a small star chain." Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, it's interesting that like 15 years later, and Viacom is still asking me to do tests for bit.
Basically. It's never changed. I mean, right now, that's what I'm doing now. My problem is that I am someone who likes to develop a show.
To my house, but I have
And that means the story and the visual simultaneously from the ground up.
stuff that coming to me.
And then form a crew and a culture of that project, and to live, breathe, and eat that project. And over the years, I've learned that has to be kind of tempered, because the studios don't like that. You're starting to give yourself too much power when you do it that way.
Oh, really?
I think so. I think And I never saw it that way. I just saw it as caring. But there's been a number of times that I've been told by higher ups that it would probably be a little bit better if I cared less, which is fine.
Yeah.
I get it. I know what that means now. But when you're young, and you're full of dreams and vision, that stuff seems blasphemous and incongruous.
Yeah.
But I understand it now. Don't necessarily like it all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, no, it takes time. I may not, I'll do a project and not work for 5 years because I'm birthing a new thing.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden you're doing a Hail Mary pass because how are you going to pay your bills if you don't finally sell this baby, if it's stillborn?
Yeah. Yeah.
And since I've made Turtles, I've had, maybe 3 or 4 projects killed.
Oh my God.
But I have, a few still alive that I'm working on now, and who knows if they'll ever see the light of day, but it's weird. It's a big gamble. I should probably, at some point, just stop trying to make original shows and just, surrender completely to the machine and just make franchises. It's hard.
Yeah.
That's it can be very difficult sometimes.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place where you want to do it. And it does happen, and it's not super rare, but sometimes it can be very difficult, though, to want to just work on that stuff.
Tangentially related question. What do you think are some of the biggest mistakes you see other showrunners making that you try and correct when you're running your own show? Or when you're pitching your own show?
Every time I make a show, I think that I'm going to be like the best that I've ever been. And then in retrospect, I feel like I had a lot to learn still. So, for me, I take that to heart as the core of what the issue is. And I need to learn as I get older, especially to always listen and be open to others and share. But, that's a fine line. It's difficult. I think it's important as a lover of the medium to always maintain some sort of student-like approach of it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And maybe even see it as some sort of grad project. I'm in some kind of graduate studies, or I have some kind of making a TV show is almost like you're getting a grant to do an art piece.
Yeah.
But it helps when you're able to sell $5 million worth of action figures.
Yeah.
They kind of leave you alone a little bit in certain areas. But everything fades,
Yeah.
It doesn't matter how much success you have. As soon as you finish a project, you don't necessarily build on it. You have a calling card, which is nice. But you're always kind of restarting from the ground up. You'll go into a meeting and people won't know who you are or don't care about what you made. And
Yeah.
Business.
And I think in this town, if you want to make something, you can vilify an executive or whatever, think that they're just, business people, but they're not business people. If they're business people, they would be in business, making money. They're actually trying to be creative.
Yeah.
And what you got to do is you have to align yourself with an executive that wants to make what you want to make. And then it'll get made. Or vice versa. This executive wants to make this, and so do I, and that's what I'm aligning myself with. That project will get done. But if, a lot of these people are like, oh, this exec and that exec, and these creative execs, and what do they know? I don't think it's that so much. I think you just have to, it's about timing. And if that means you have to bow out for a few rounds because things aren't clicking, well, that's just how it works. You're not going to work for 5 years. You're not going to make one show to the next.
Yeah.
I don't even think some of the greatest people get to do that. And you also need to creatively, mature and grow and heal.
Yeah.
Making something like Turtles for close to 10 years can be, a little bit stunting. And it's I felt a little punchy after Turtles. I felt like, oh yeah, I felt like I got the shit kicked out of me. It was almost like I had trauma from all that. It's a lot of hours and a lot of work and a lot of demands. And I didn't want to make another show for years. So it's sometimes you welcome the cycle.
I do love how you said, looking at it as a learning experience. I think it was Kurosawa. He was receiving his Lifetime Achievement Oscar, and he said, "Thank you, but I'm still just a student." But yeah, I think that's a.
You hear everybody talk about it. Like Scorsese talks about it. I don't know. I'm doing right now. I'm just when we rescheduled this, and one of the reasons was I've just been slammed, and I did get COVID too. But in the middle,
Sorry about that.
oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine, and it wasn't horrible. I do feel a little. I'm healed, but I do feel a little off center. But that COVID hit me in the middle of me putting together a pilot for Disney, and it was intense. It was just having to draw in that feverish state and having no choice. Oh boy, yeah. You can see a transition in my drawings, like the COVID days, and then coming out of it, it was cool.
Well, hey, I'm not gonna ask you what you're working on now because I imagine you're under NDA and can't talk about it. But I am curious, like, when you like the process, like you're approaching a company, an executive who's passionate.
Do they pay you to develop it, or are you just a one-man band and you don't get paid until they actually pick up the show?
Kind of the latter. And definitely, like, you know, there's a couple ways it works. What I find now lately mostly is that you'll get a call to come in for a franchise, or, you know, and then they'll ask you for your take, or they'll just kind of gauge what your interest is or your passion for it. At some point, if you're lucky, they'll give you freelance development. You can do visuals or you do story stuff.
Yeah.
Nice for me. And then you go away, and that's what you're doing. Or if you're trying to make something original, it's a little trickier, you're doing all that stuff for yourself. And those are all things that are on your shelf that you pull down every once in a while and continue to work on. And when a new executive pops up or something, you have a general meeting, you know, in that kind of low risk setting, they say, you got anything that you're crazy about or working on? And then you pull out these 3 or 4 things that, you know, you just kind of feel like an elevator pitch on.
Yeah.
If one takes, then you get into a more formal meeting. And with a little luck, you know, it gets into development.
Yeah.
Which is weird because now a lot of people, this is the difference between when I first came out here and now. I mean, a lot of people that are like, oh, I sold a show to this studio. And you'll go, oh, what's it on? They'll go, oh, it's not on anything. I'm just in development. It's like, well, you didn't, that's not what we used to call selling a show, but okay.
Yeah.
You sell a show, it's on television.
Okay. Thank you.
But yeah, that happened with me actually with the project I'm on now. Like I wrapped Turtles, took a bunch of generals, and they asked me what my interests were, and I said, you know, I have this one idea I've been kicking around. About a week later, my manager called me and goes, you know, you mentioned this thing to them and they're really into it. They want to pick it up.
Right.
That's how that works. I mean, but I'm telling you, again, this is the whole, you got to align with what they want to make. I've had some really great things that I've found very dear to me that I thought were no-brainers.
Yeah.
It doesn't even matter how much you develop them. You just really love them.
Did you need a glass?
Yes, please. Do you think I could get another iced tea? Is that possible? So it doesn't matter how much you've developed it or how realized it is or how much work you have. They'll just be like, nah, it's too much like this, or we're not interested in that. But the thing I'm doing right now, it's like, it was almost the flip. It was like, here's this notion I have. And they were like, wow, we kind of think that's interesting. And you're like, really? Listen, that's it lined up with what they wanted to make. That's how that works. It's just, and you got to keep trying and hoping that you're going to hit that lottery. I've pitched hundreds of times. Yeah. Oh, thank you. I've pitched hundreds of times, and it's like, this is like the 7th or 8th show that I've actually had go into development. So those odds they're not terrible, but they're not 50-50.
Yeah.
You got to just, how'd the meeting go?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you go to a meeting knowing that it's not going to go. Thank you so much. I think you go knowing it's not going to go, and then when it goes, you're like, I think I got something.
What are you looking forward to most?
In what sense?
In any sense, in life and film and.
I realize now more than ever that my creativity was a coping mechanism that came from probably the way I was raised, and it was a survival skill. And when I'm not allowed to do it now and get paid for it, that my life is not so fulfilled. So I'm not saying that, I think it's a privilege.
Yeah.
Not a privilege, I think it's something that I was very grateful to have, and I long for that again. to be creatively fulfilled and to have my lifestyle be accommodated in doing that.
Right.
And so that's the thing that keeps me hoping and trying, moving forward. Everything else is a distraction. It's not about, success isn't about material things or financial things. It's about, being complete as a person. And right now, because I don't have a show or I don't have a project I love, I do feel a little incomplete. And I think I think I've matured a little bit. I've also learned that maybe I shouldn't let those things define who I am as a person.
Yeah.
But I really do need to be creative 24/7.
Yeah.
Like that muscle, I am a much happier person when that muscle is limber, So that's what I'm striving for now. I just finished putting together a pilot for Disney, and I found myself to be incredibly fulfilled creatively and just kind of blissful it was hard hours, but I really loved it.
Yeah.
So that's what I'm looking forward to. And then, outside of that, I just want to get hopefully I could be one of the few that can retire with their pension in the union. I'm so close. I need X number of years and hours, but I'm close.
Yeah.
I need to be able to do that, or it was all for nothing in a way. If your eyes are open and your heart's open, you just, learning and seeing life as a student, I think is going to always kind of keep some wonder about you. And I think that fuels me the most.
Awesome.
Otherwise this town will grind you up. You can't let that happen. Can't take anything too serious.
No. If you'll pardon the short pun, you can't care too much.
Right.
And that is Season 3, Episode 10 of the Producers Lounge podcast. Thank you to my guest, Ciro Nieli, for joining us. You can find out more about him by checking out the show notes and subscribing to our YouTube channel at Greater Grander. Our intro and outro music today was Big Blues by Audionautics. Our episode still image is by Ricardo Tomas on greaterandgrander.com. We'd love to hear from you, and you can check out this week's accompanying article on greaterandgrander.com entitled 6 Lessons I Wish I Knew in Film School That'll Actually Get You Hired. Link in the show notes. You can stay up to date by following us on YouTube and social media at the handle Greater Grander, all one word. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and wherever fine podcasts are found. And also, if you like what we do, share this podcast with a friend who you think will enjoy it. Join us next week for more cocktails and questions, and until then, keep producing dreams.